It's so crazy. I feel like it feels a lot like it was at Utah, but then I look and see we have freaking Browns jerseys on, so I don't know, it's so cool. Other than him being drafted here, that I would have wanted more. So I think, I don't know, I'm just so excited to be here with my brother.
The Cleveland Browns are officially reaching the point where every single quarterback with a pulse somehow gets connected to this team. And now the latest name floating around is Brendan Sorsby, a talented quarterback with arm strength, upside, athleticism, and according to some scouts, the kind of raw ability that reminds people of Caleb Williams and Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, those names actually got mentioned. But here's the part nobody is talking about. Talent is not the issue here. The problem is timing, fit, pressure, baggage, and the absolute chaos that would come from dropping another controversial quarterback situation into the middle of Cleveland right now. Because let's be honest for a second, Browns fans are exhausted. Every single week it feels like there's another quarterback debate, another media war, another fan civil war online about who should start, who should get cut, who's overrated, who's underrated, and who Andrew Berry should magically bring in next. Deshaun Watson still dominates headlines. Shedeur Sanders already has the fan base split. Dillon Gabriel gets criticized one day and defended the next. And now, people suddenly want the Browns to potentially throw future assets at Brendan Sorsby, while he's literally in the middle of NCAA investigations and gambling allegations. At some point, this stops becoming football discussion and starts becoming tabloid season.
Oh yeah, and then so just after the draft finished, I was just around with him and hearing the phone calls he was getting and him making that decision. And we're being there, he was down to 2 teams, and I was like, crossing my fingers and just really happy that I'm here with my brother.
And this is where it gets dangerous, because once a franchise becomes addicted to quarterback drama, every football conversation disappears. Nobody talks about offensive line development, nobody talks about receivers, nobody talks about defensive schemes or rookie progression anymore. It becomes nonstop quarterback hysteria 24/7, and the Browns are already dangerously close to that point. So when Brendan Sorsby's name started getting attached to Cleveland, people instantly lost their minds without even asking the most important question. Does this actually make sense for the Browns right now? The answer is no. Now, before people start screaming in the comments acting like this is some anti-Sorsby rant, let's make one thing clear immediately. Brendan Sorsby can play football. Nobody's denying that. Multiple scouts and analysts have already talked about his arm talent. One offensive coordinator reportedly compared parts of his skill set to Caleb Williams and Patrick Mahomes. That's not normal praise. Tony Grossi even mentioned that some evaluators believe Sorsby could have been a top quarterback prospect if everything stayed clean and normal. We're talking about a guy with legitimate physical tools. Big frame, strong arm, athletic upside. The talent itself isn't being questioned. But here's the part nobody is talking about. The NFL is not Madden. You don't just collect talented quarterbacks like Pokemon cards and assume it'll somehow work itself out later. Context matters. Locker rooms matter. Timing matters. Stability matters. And right now, bringing Brendan Sorsby into Cleveland would feel less like building a football team and more like producers trying to create reality television. Because once you actually break down the situation, it becomes pretty obvious why the Browns should stay far away from this. Sorsby is currently tied to gambling allegations involving thousands of online sports bets dating back to his Indiana days. Reports say some of those bets allegedly involved Indiana football games while he was on the roster. Even if he never played in those games, and even if the bets were allegedly for Indiana to win, NCAA rules still treat that as a massive integrity issue. That's not small. That's not minor controversy. That's potentially career-altering stuff. And this is where young players usually make a mistake. They think talent automatically outweighs risk. It doesn't, especially not for organizations already drowning in scrutiny. The Browns are one of the most heavily criticized franchises in football already. Every move gets dissected. Every quarterback storyline turns into national news. So why would Cleveland voluntarily throw itself into another media storm involving gambling investigations, lawsuits, eligibility questions, and addiction recovery uncertainty? Because that's another layer here people keep ignoring. Sorsby reportedly entered a residential treatment program for gambling addiction after the investigation surfaced. And honestly, before football even enters the conversation, that's the human part that matters most. Addiction is serious. It destroys careers, families, and lives. Anybody trying to get their life under control deserves respect for taking that step. But football-wise, that's exactly why Cleveland is the wrong place for this situation.
I think it crossed our minds both at one point, like, okay, there's this team that potentially could pick us both up, but I mean, at the end of the day, my goal was to get drafted. It didn't happen, and I'm fortunate to have this opportunity to continue to play football and then continue to play with my brother.
The Browns aren't built to quietly develop a quarterback under zero pressure. That environment doesn't exist in Cleveland anymore. Every quarterback becomes front-page news immediately. Every practice rep becomes a debate show topic. Every rumor becomes a national discussion. You think throwing Brendan Sorsby into that circus while he's trying to rebuild his life and fight NCAA investigations is somehow helping him? No, that's gasoline on a fire. And honestly, Browns fans should know this better than anybody because they've already lived through versions of this story before. Johnny Manziel, Deshaun Watson, endless quarterback controversy, endless media attention, endless conversations that stop being about football and start becoming about headlines. At some point, an organization has to stop chasing chaos. This is where it gets dangerous for Andrew Berry, too, because no matter what move the Browns make now, people are already waiting to criticize it. Draft Dillon Gabriel, fans complain. Bring in Shedeur Sanders, fans complain. Keep Watson around, fans complain. So now imagine adding Brendan Sorsby to that mix. You wouldn't even be talking about football anymore. Every single press conference would become about gambling investigations, NCAA rulings, lawsuits, and whether Cleveland is doing this again. And honestly, the weirdest part is the Browns don't even need another developmental quarterback project right now. That's what makes this conversation feel forced. Cleveland literally just brought in young quarterbacks already. They already have a crowded quarterback discussion dominating the offseason. They already have rookie minicamp storylines people should actually be excited about. Spencer Fano just arrived as the first offensive tackle drafted. Denzel Boston is bringing size and red zone ability to the receiver room. The Browns quietly upgraded multiple offensive positions, but instead of talking about football development, everybody wants another quarterback soap opera. Look at what's happening around rookie minicamp already. Spencer Fano walks into Cleveland with an attitude Browns fans have been begging for on the offensive line. This dude spent his entire life competing against his older brother Logan Fano, fighting for reps, fighting in practice, even fist fighting growing up because both brothers were so competitive. Spencer literally talked about waking up in the middle of the night, catching Logan secretly practicing video games just to beat him later. That mentality translates to football. That edge matters. And here's the part nobody is talking about. That's the kind of culture Cleveland should be focusing on right now. Toughness, competition, development, building actual football identity again, not chasing every quarterback headline floating around social media. Because when you really look at this Browns roster, the biggest issue last season wasn't not enough quarterbacks. It was inconsistency everywhere else. Offensive line breakdowns, lack of receiver size, penalties killing explosive plays, no physical identity up front. That's why the Spencer Fano edition matters so much. Cleveland needed linemen who want to deliver the punch instead of constantly absorbing it. They needed bigger pass catchers like Denzel Boston who can actually win contested catches in the red zone. They needed structure, and somehow people still want to turn the entire offseason into quarterback roulette again.
Well, when Spencer got drafted, he talked about the relief of not having to block Myles Garrett on Sundays.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like for you to be in that same defensive end room?
Man, there's no better situation I could ask for myself than to, have a chance to learn from probably the best of all time. And that's something I'm not going to take for granted, and I'm excited for that opportunity.
This is where young fans usually make a mistake. They fall in love with upside without thinking about situation. Yes, Brendan Sorsby has talent. Nobody's denying that. But talent alone doesn't magically erase instability. The Browns already have enough instability around the quarterback position. Adding another uncertain situation into the mix would be organizational self-sabotage, especially because there are still massive unknowns surrounding Sorsby himself. Nobody even knows how the NCAA situation ends yet. Nobody knows whether eligibility issues get resolved. Nobody knows how long recovery and treatment take. Nobody knows how NFL teams would even approach him in a supplemental draft situation. Yet, somehow, fans are already acting like Cleveland should spend meaningful assets on him immediately. That's insanity. And honestly, it starts sounding irresponsible after a certain point. Because think about the environment Cleveland would be placing him into. A city hyper-focused on quarterbacks, national media waiting for disaster, fan bases already divided over Watson and Shedeur Sanders, endless debates online every single day. That's not an ideal environment for a young player trying to stabilize his life and career. That's pressure stacked on top of pressure. Meanwhile, the Browns are finally starting to quietly build real football depth again. Rookie minicamp matters because these young players are actually getting opportunities to compete. Guys like Denzel Boston are suddenly taking every rep possible and proving themselves. Offensive linemen are battling for identity. Coaches are trying to establish physicality again. That stuff matters long term way more than another quarterback headline. And this is where it gets dangerous for the fan base too, because constantly chasing quarterback drama creates unrealistic expectations for everything else. Suddenly, nobody cares about actual roster building anymore. It becomes who's the next quarterback every single week forever. That mindset destroys patience and development. Football teams don't become contenders because they collected the most quarterbacks. They become contenders because they built systems, depth, physicality, and culture. Look at the best organizations in football right now. Most of them aren't throwing themselves into nonstop chaos every offseason. They identify talent, build structure, and stay disciplined.
He is the most athletic tackle I've ever seen. Like, there's some guys, they are really strong, but they're not that fast, or they're really fast, but they're kind of lightweight. Spencer's he's a mix of everything. Good feet, good hands, he's strong. And it makes it hard for guys like me, fast guys like me, to try to get around him. So
that's exactly why Cleveland should skip Brendan Sorsby. Not because he's untalented, not because people can't recover from mistakes, not because second chances don't matter, but because the Browns finally need to stop acting desperate every time another quarterback name appears online. And honestly, the funniest part about all this is fans pretending this move would somehow solve the quarterback chaos instead of multiplying it. Imagine this quarterback room if Cleveland added Sorsby right now. Watson headlines, Shedeur Sanders debates, Dillon Gabriel arguments, rookie narratives, NCAA gambling investigations, supplemental draft speculation, national media circus every day. That's not football anymore. That's content farming. At some point, adults inside the organization have to step in and say enough, because there's also a human side here beyond football. If Sorsby is truly battling gambling addiction issues, then his priority shouldn't be surviving Browns media pressure right now. His priority should be getting healthy, getting stable, rebuilding his career correctly. Throwing him into Cleveland's current quarterback insanity helps nobody, and the Browns themselves finally seem to understand something important this offseason. Physical football still wins games. That's why so much focus went toward improving the offensive line, adding size at receiver, and rebuilding roster depth. They're trying to fix foundational problems instead of endlessly recycling quarterback drama. Spencer Fano represents that shift perfectly. The Browns drafted a lineman with attitude, toughness, and competitive obsession. A guy who understands violence at the line of scrimmage. A guy who spent years battling his brother every single day. That's football culture. That's development. That's identity. Not chasing another speculative quarterback storyline because social media got bored for 5 minutes. And honestly, Browns fans should be tired of it by now too. Every offseason becomes another emotional roller coaster because people keep treating quarterbacks like lottery tickets instead of actual human beings answering difficult situations. Brendan Sorsby isn't some video game creative player. He's a young man dealing with serious allegations, legal complications, addiction treatment, and career uncertainty all at once. The Browns do not need to become part of that story, especially not when there's actual football progress happening elsewhere on the roster. Because here's the reality nobody wants to admit. Cleveland already has enough pressure surrounding the quarterback room to last an entire season. Adding Brendan Sorsby wouldn't calm anything down. It would explode everything again. And eventually, franchises either learn from chaos or they become addicted to it forever. So the question Browns fans need to ask themselves isn't whether Brendan Sorsby has talent. The real question is this: do you actually want Cleveland building a football team again? Or do you just want another quarterback reality show? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.